gold. And when you think about the fact that this soil probably took hundreds of years to form,
Hello, my name is Christine Brown. I'm a field crop sustainability specialist.
Alrighty, welcome back everyone to March Manure Mondays. And on behalf of Christine Brown, myself, Andrew Berry, with the Ontario Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Agribusiness, we'd love to welcome you back to part 3 of our series. And we're going to have a great session today. Last week, we did a session on manure and cover crops. We had 2 farmers and a researcher. And I tell you, that session, we had a lot of engagement. And I just checked the recording, and there's been 462 views, so that has definitely been a popular one. Great one to circle back to. Just go to Field Crop News, the YouTube channel, and you can watch it there. And if you didn't find it that way, the email that you receive every week to log on also has links at the bottom now to the recorded sessions. So a quick reminder that we go to the end of the hour, 3 o'clock. We'd love to have your questions and your comments in the chat, so post them there as we're going through the session. We'll bring them forward to the panel. But we don't want to hear your dog and your cat and your tractor, so please stay muted in the background so that we don't get interrupted. All right, we need to jump right into today's topic because we've got a lot to cover today. Today is From Pit to Profit. And we have 3 farmers and also a host that are going to join us looking at various integrated manure management systems. So before we do jump in, I want to introduce who the folks are. So Rudi Spruit, and Rudi's in his tractor today. We're glad Rudi's here. He is with Spruit Dairy from just near where I live, Kincardine, Ontario. And so Rudi, thanks for joining us. We have Ken Empey, who is a dairy farmer outside of the London, Ontario area as well. And Ken, thanks for joining us. And then finally, Ryan Ross, who is very close to where I am today, Mildmay, Ontario, another dairy farmer. And I think we might have had to pull him out of the maple syrup sugar shack today to get him here. But anyhow, we're glad they're all here. And then, of course, Mel Luymes, who is no stranger to Manure Mondays. She seems to sneak in here every year, one way or another.
You
And
got to get it in there.
we just couldn't leave these 3 guys unsupervised, so we had to bring Mel in. But Mel, thanks for coming back. And Mel, one of the unique things she does, amongst many, is she is the editor of a great magazine called The Rural Voice. So if you are living in Midwestern Ontario, then this is the magazine for you. There's Mel's picture as the editor. Mel, I think it's deadline day today, so
It actually is deadline day. I'm thinking about the April issue right now, but yeah.
Right on. Well, we're going to let these guys take a break for a minute. We're going to turn it over to Mel to get us started with some slides and intro us. And I will say we are going to be sharing some of the video that was put together last year for the Ontario Agriculture Conference. There'll be a portion of that we'll see as well. Then we'll circle back at the end and have a panel discussion with everyone together. So, Mel, you take it away.
Thanks so much, Andrew. And yeah, you'll probably start seeing a lot more manure stories in the Rural Voice as well when it's a slow news day. So this I'm not sure if you've seen the Ontario Ag Conference had pit to profit video, which we're going to see. I'm going to be doing a little bit of an intro here. Just wanted to say I used to work with OPACA, so that's the Ontario Professional Agri Contractors. I think I said that wrong. And we were funded by Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada. It was part of their Living Lab Ontario project. And we were looking at 4 different manure treatment systems and do they pay? These were the systems that we were looking at. And do they pay? Yes, depending on your size. It's always the answer is it depends, right? So we looked at cover and flare, acidification, separation, and aeration. And we were looking at it from the lens of methane. So methane is it's like the byproduct of digestion. It's like basically liquid composting. Archaea emit, emit, excrete CH4, methane, in very typical conditions. They need to be have a certain pH. They need to have a lot of feedstock. They need to have a lot of organic matter to break down, and they need to be in anaerobic conditions, so no oxygen. So liquid manure pits is where methane is. It's a point source essentially that you can see where the methane would be emitted. And so that's why we were looking at these systems, and it was in conjunction with their Living Lab project. But before we really understood if they paid for themselves, we had to understand what's the base value of manure. And so this is it's a quick and dirty overview, and this is largely underestimated, I would imagine, because we are just looking at the NPK values and fertilizer values 2 years ago now at this point. This was about last year that we did this project. So this is what we're looking at. We're not looking at the organic matter and basically the priceless potential of dairy and hog manure, but we're looking at 28 bucks per 1,000 gallons for dairy manure and 43 for hog manure. And a lot of that is the available nitrogen that's really driving that year one value, I should say. So all of that determines what we think is how far manure will travel on it in and of itself. So assuming those values, and then we started looking at contractor rates. This is why AAFC asked OPACA to do this project, is because we've got a lot of manure contractors, and so we were using the custom rates that they most typically use. And then we're looking at, how far should manure travel? And for finishing hog manure, like the hot stuff, it could go, we estimate 24 kilometers at least. Whereas dairy manure is not nearly so long. So all of this determines basically the value of manure, and then we looked at how these manure treatment systems change those values. This, if you want a quick and dirty look at your manure values as they compare to fertilizer rates, go to our website or OPACA's website at custom rates, and you'll see every year we update our own custom rates from our members. And then we've got this little handy spreadsheet here that you can pop in your own values and sort of determine how much manure is worth. I think it's also important to note, though, and I call this the brown market, is that it really is driven by supply and demand within like a 5 or 10 kilometer radius, right? So I have seen people pay other people to take manure and people pay to take manure. So it's all going to depend on supply and demand. So back to this project, we talked with so many people and we really relied on AgriSuite. If you've not used AgriSuite, do log on to this site and have a play around with it, because a lot of our numbers were taken from there. And then we talked to just a lot of people in the industry. And these are some of our members that we also talked to. These are just the ones that spread manure. So let's go back. These are the 4 systems that we talked about. Cover and flare is really the idea of you're not stopping methane production, but you are capturing that methane and just converting it to CO2. It looks bad, but it's actually better. So there's just a giant flame right beside this. This is the photos from Cornell's. They have a lot of these up in upstate New York, but they are very effective at reducing the methane that is emitted by 90%. And then we've got acidification, which again lowers the pH to below 6.3 or 5.5 in this case. They do this more so in Denmark and in Europe. Again, highly effective at reducing not only methane emissions, but ammonia. Separation, there's a range because it really depends on how good your separator is. But it all matters. Like you have to take out the sort of the solids out of the manure right away. It starts digesting within even hours of being in a liquid system. And so your separation system really matters in terms of the bedding quality and the methane emission reduction. And then lastly, aeration. These are becoming more popular. And we found this was the easiest win from our project, is just getting some intermittent air in there. It doesn't stop it all the way unless you like really ramp up the air, in which case you have to start looking at cost benefits. But so those are Those are just an overview of the system. I think it's important to note, though, that even by just reducing the amount of manure in a pit in the hottest parts of the year, in the summer, you're already reducing methane emissions because it really and I've seen this in Spain. Spain is more of an issue where it's just warm all the time. They were looking at refrigeration units for manure. If you can keep manure cold, you're also stopping methane emissions. Clearly, we have the winter that does it for us here. So yeah, I'll just go really quickly. The benefits of a cover and flare system is that there's no rainwater in there, but you have to do a solid liquid separation before it goes in that pit because it's not coming out again. That cover's not coming off, and that cover is extremely expensive. This whole system could cost $1,000,000. Acidification, this is a high-tech version. Again, we're looking at $500,000 at least, and you do have to do a solid liquid separation. You take the liquid portion, and then this is looking at the pH, and then in stream, they're injecting sulfuric acid. So now you're increasing the manure is you're reducing the ammonia loss, so you're increasing the nitrogen, and it gets that bonus sulfur and really good consistency as well with the sulfuric acid. But what Agriculture Canada was doing, and I'm not sure exactly how their season went, but they're doing a very low tech version of acidification, which is just carefully, slowly agitating the pit as they put the sulfuric acid in, which is in the tote in this case. And so it can take several hours of agitation and then it froths up pretty good, but it does reduce methane for about a month. And then although the research could have changed, so don't hold me to that. So in general, it might not have that much of an impact because it's only for a month. But if we only need to do it in the hottest 3 months of the year, then you only need 3 applications, for example. And there's no added infrastructure costs. So separation, this all depends on your system because as we'll see from Ryan, he's not the world's biggest operator, but he is making this work and it makes sense for him because he's reusing it as bedding. And so if you're looking, you really are creating two separate problems. If you know how to manage them correctly, then they're not problems anymore. We're gonna hear more about that later in our session. But yeah, this is just and you'll see this exact unit again. But yeah, the screw press, it does not do as good of a job in creating bedding because the fibers are more like twisted from the action of the screw press. And hog manure is very difficult to separate, but we did find Technopure, again out of Spain from Rotecna that does do it. And again, you have to be using it for something. So if it's for irrigation, bedding, or even for flushing barns, farmers have found a lot of value from separating manure. Lastly, aeration. Again, I think the jury's out on this one because farmers that have used it here say that there's the nitrogen is way more available. So they see that it's actually acting more like a hog manure. But the benefits they see is sometimes it's almost unquantifiable. Like it's reducing odors in the barn. One farmer said he did the test. He was a hog farmer. He did a test where he didn't take a shower and he went to a party after he'd been in the barn and no one complained. So he said that was that was a good test of whether the system was working. So far less odors. And yeah, the consistency, you don't have to agitate it anymore. You're just ready to go at any time that you can spread manure. You don't have to wait a few hours to agitate. It's just ready to go. So all of this none of these can be done with sand. And I should mention that I'm very, very heavily focused on dairy, and this whole session will be about dairy because for underbarn pits, pretty much the only thing you can do is aeration. Everything else is far too dangerous, but none of them can be done with sand. And so our project also looked at the cost of taking sand out. And you can spend a lot of money on some of these devices that will do a pretty good job for you, but sand lanes also work fine. So I'll just conclude with, okay, so what is it? What's the cost? As always, there's economy of scale. So we looked at a small, medium, and large dairy farm. Small is 50 milking, medium 100 milking, large is 400 milking herd. So then the rest of the herd as well. Aeration made the most sense. This is in the end, I was doing the cost benefit and then I brought it back to its efficacy. So we're really looking at how much does it cost to reduce methane by 1 ton of CO2 equivalent. But then this dotted line across here is showing you what's the current price of carbon. If we were going to do carbon credits, you can see that only the largest farms are currently at a price where it would make sense to be in the carbon market with these manure technologies. but every year it's going up $15. And I think who knows though, with the current climate, political climate that is, not actual climate, what it could be in the future. But you can see that yeah, that it might make sense going forward. But this was our last, there we go. This was our last analysis, was really looking at, okay, is there the sweet spot? What is the closest to the sweet spot? And there really wasn't a good answer. Like if we want something to be the least expensive and the most effective, there really isn't one. Aeration, it does seem is the lowest hanging fruit, however. Separation makes sense if your system makes it make sense. And so that's what we're going to hear from now. I guess I'll see if there's any questions in the chat. But other than that, we could go right into the video.
Sounds good, Mel. Yeah, let's pull up the video. I think the question in the chat, I think you answered. So
Oh, yeah, do not. I do want to stress that sulfuric acid, there's a reason why they stopped doing it in Europe, and it had to do with death. So be very, very careful. And that's why we were recommending that a contractor does it. And that's why OPACA was involved, is contractors can get it in bulk, they can use correct equipment, and they will have safety training, and that we don't recommend that farmers do this at home. And Mark's question, the NPK values we use for the calculation of manure value is from AgriSuite and the Manure Data Bank from OMAFA. Okay, so now we're here at Ross Dairy. We're outside of Mildmay. And this is a new barn, 2022, you built it.
Yep.
You were on sawdust for a year before you decided to go to green bedding. So why did you make this decision?
When we started milking this barn in January 2023, we built this barn to do a sawdust bedding. We, at the time, felt sawdust was what was to meet for us. We did not want the sand wear and tear, the expense of the sand. We were on the sawdust and we just weren't satisfied with how much product the cows kicked out of the stalls. Our manure system struggled with the dryness from the sawdust, and it ended up costing us $400 a week on sawdust bedding with it. That's when it sparked up the conversation with Conestoga, with the roll press. And when we started doing the numbers, all of a sudden it's like, well, shit, we can pay for this thing in 6 or 7 years. All of a sudden, the roll press made sense.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of guys seem to be concerned about using the green bedding. How have you found it?
Before we bought the roll press from Gia, we were in contact with 3 or 4 other suppliers as well. Gia was actually the only company offering the green bedding side of things. Every other company was recommending we compost it somehow or we do a heat treatment on it. One company was even suggesting a tumbler to tumble it. And the way Gia explained it to us is we're going to press this manure into fiber. We're going to bed this fiber with cows. Anything you put in those stalls is going to have whatever bacteria is in your barn on it in 12 hours. We bed our cows once a week to compost the bedding, to make the bedding clean by heat treatment. But within 12 hours, whatever bacteria is in your barns in that bedding that you just spent all that money on. This press has been in for a year right now. We put it in August of 2024. And we've been bedding green since day one. We typically try to press at nighttime and then bed the cows the following morning. And we have seen very good success. Knock on wood, so far this summer, our first summer on it, we haven't treated a single cow for mastitis yet.
Do you want to share your SCC level?
We typically roll between 80,000 and 120,000. Yes, we will get the odd spike at the 200,000, but it comes down as fast as it goes up. But as a rule of thumb, we're between 80 and 120.
Yeah. I think the key is really, it does take an extra level of management, but you can't let this pile sit there. What does it start composting or what?
The odd time something will break or maybe a cow's calved, or if I get pulled away, I also have 3 boys in the run around the farm as well. So sometimes you press that night before, you don't get it bedded till the following morning. And yes, the pile is steaming, but we have had the pile sit for a day or two and we'll still bed it and it steams and it's cool to the touch within an hour. And we have had good success. We prefer to bed it green, but life goes on and it doesn't always happen.
And so you're not pressing every single bit of manure that comes in, right? You only need 50%.
In this barn, we're housing 100 animals in this new facility right now, and only 50% of the pressings were used in this facility. We are taking the other 50% over to the old bank barn and bed and box stalls with it as well. So not only are we saving the $400 a week on sawdust in this barn, we're also saving one bale of straw in the other barn every single day as well, which can be anywhere from $40 or $50. We ourselves don't grow any wheat, so we buy all of our straw, and a 600-pound bale costs something.
Awesome. And so there also are methane emission reduction because you're taking those solids out of the liquid portion. But that's just a byproduct. That's not even what's part of your decision making for doing this. So it's it's a happy accident to have methane reductions. So thanks so much for having us for this tour, and we'll see you at the next stop.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we're here at Spruit Farms. We've got Rudi Spruit. We're right outside of Kinloss here, and we are looking at manure irrigation. This is so cool. So Rudi, explain to us, how did we get here?
Yeah, so we were on a dairy here just outside Kinloss, nothing about 250 cows, and we were looking for a way to reduce some of our custom work and bill. You know, we don't do a lot of field work ourselves; we hire most of it out, and this was kind of a thought process. We were thinking, well, if we could boost our yields by irrigating, you know, and get rid of that dry summer slump, as well as trying to get the manure out the door without having to add too much cost to the system. I think that was how we got here. So,
but you started with sand bedding.
Yeah, so the system kind of works. We have a sand lane and then a freestall. So we schizo scrape into a flush flume into a sand lane, and because of that, we already have very thin manure. So we've since that system, we've added a separator. We're taking our solids out, and then we're adding a little bit of water, fresh water to irrigate, because we need more than just our manure to irrigate, and that leads us to the system where then we have a long-term storage, 10 million gallon storage pond where we're adding the manure and the water together. And then we're irrigating that 5 times a year at a half inch.
Amazing. And you're using a slope screen. Why did you choose that?
We picked slope screen. We looked at different separator options. You know, with how thin we're adding the manure is getting with the sand lane and the flush spoon, a screw press wasn't going to work. It was just too thin. And the other option, a rotary screen, well, it's a good option. It's almost identical. It's too much maintenance. Slope screen is very simple. There's not much can go wrong. It's very easy to maintain, very easy to look after. And that's the reason we went that way.
And this is a big project. I bet this was quite an investment. But you kind of looked at the ROI. What are we looking at? Because you're looking at the yields.
Yeah. So last year we doubled our corn yields from
Wow.
It was a dry year, so we doubled our yields from the dry spots versus the irrigated spots. And the alfalfa, we're seeing at least 2 times to 2.5 times yield in those dry sections of the summer. Now, I'm not saying that's guaranteed every year, but if we even get 20 to 30% yield bumps, I think we're looking at an 8-year return on investment.
An 8-year return on investment. That's pretty incredible. Wow.
And a lot of settings. So we don't have to call anybody in the spring to put mirror at the door.
Okay.
Awesome.
And so you still got the solids. So everything is running through that separator. And so what are you doing with the solid portion?
The solids right now we are stacking and composting, and then we up to now have been putting it on our alfalfa ground after the third cut or fourth cut, and sometimes before we plant corn. We're still looking for the best way to use that. I think there's some value there beyond just spreading on our own fields, but we haven't quite found the best use case yet.
Excellent. Yeah. And so it's stacking in a pile. And so it's no longer anaerobic, creating methane, it's aerobic. And so you had an ROI of 8 years without even looking at the carbon credit potential for the methane emission reduction. So it's an interesting thing to see how we could be using this technology on farms here in the future. Thank you so much, Rudi, for the tour. That was incredible.
Welcome.
So we've seen some solid liquid separation. In my mind, it's like, didn't we just make one problem into 2 separate problems, a liquid problem and a solid problem? What are your thoughts? Is it true that you're actually taking all the nutrients into the solid portion, or what just happened?
So by separating it, you actually made it more complicated from an application perspective because now you have to deal with the liquids and the solids. But on the other hand, you've made it simpler because with the separation, you have the ability to take the solids, which are higher in the phosphorus and higher in organic nitrogen. So if you're looking for organic matter benefits, then suddenly it becomes more economical to travel with that manure to those farther fields. The hard part has always been we're left with liquids. Let's say it costs $1.50 to move water. Well, if you're dealing with less than 1% dry matter, that's 99% water. That's expensive.
Yeah.
And so if there's no nutrient content in it, then how do we handle that portion of the manure economically?
And is there nutrients in it?
There's a little bit of ammonia, and there's some potash, depending on the kind of farm.
Mm-hmm.
But with dairy farms, generally the rule of thumb is we've got the phosphorus and the organic nitrogen is with the solid portion. We've got the ammonium and the potash is more with the liquid portion.
Okay, interesting. So it changes the value of both the solid and the liquid. In our calculations, we thought maybe $60 per metric ton would be that solid portion, and that would economically travel about 60 kilometers. So it definitely goes further. But then you have to look at how you're managing those liquids. And for Rudi, it was obviously increased yields. He was running it through a pivot, but it was also the decreased custom fill.
And I guess the other benefit is we're right now in a relatively dry period in the summer.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we don't have rain, we don't get third cut or fourth cut, depending on where we are in the season. So even looking at his field, we had a huge difference in growth in just 1 week where you had the nutrient-rich water versus where you didn't. So that's hard to do an estimate on. And Rudi was talking about corn yield numbers, anywhere from 20 to 50%.
Yeah.
But then the other benefit, when we start talking about greenhouse gases and we talk about carbon sequestration and all that kind of thing, all that extra biomass, all that extra carbon that we're sequestering, both in the biomass, but also in the root biomass. We haven't modeled it, but what benefit is that giving? And economically, we aren't there yet, but there is a benefit.
Yeah, for sure. It's a much bigger system. So Rudi and Ryan's farms were very different. Like they were both using a Gia separator, but Rudi was using it for the water, whereas Ryan was using it for the solids because he's using that solid for bedding. And a lot of people will sort of like groan when they hear that because a lot of people have been burned in the past in terms of having higher somatic cell count rates and mastitis issues by using that, especially green bedding. A lot of people, as Ryan was explaining, prefer to maybe heat it or compost it or pasteurize it in some way because they really want to kill that bacteria. Ryan and the guys that are using it, and because there are a few, and I've noticed that they are younger and maybe they just didn't believe the horror stories that their parents told them. But it takes a different level of management. Ryan is applying bedding a lot more often. There's guys that we were talking to that are even using a bedding robot. And so they're applying it multiple times a day. It's basically bedding on demand, and that's what runs the separator. So there's many ways that you can go about it, but I think in general, it just takes a little bit more management. It takes a lot of ventilation. Ryan had an extremely well ventilated barn as it was beautifully nice, cool air in there, even on this hot, sweaty day.
The test is in the winter.
What's that?
The real test is in the winter.
Oh, yeah, of course. No, it's true. If you look at his savings he had from those shavings he wasn't using anymore, he says he's paying for his system within 6 years, and then he's just laughing at that point.
Yeah. So one of the questions, and you've got composting bedded pack system.
Mm-hmm.
And so is there something in between? So in the composted bedding pack systems, they're doing the same kind of thing, except they're using sawdust bedding. But there's some people that have been trying this bedding system, maybe mixing it with sawdust and then doing some kind of a cultivation in the barn to try and keep the somatic cell counts down. There's all kinds of things that are still being explored.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right. Let's take a different kind of management.
You got to wrap your head around it. Yeah. And we do understand why sand is king. We did the economics, and even for all of the added cost of getting a contractor to plop a manure boat in there or sandblasting your contractor's equipment, it does make an economic sense. It's a cheaper alternative and the cows really love it and it's less management. But to be clear, none of these technologies will work with sand. And so taking sand out of the manure is the first step you need to be doing any of these manure treatment systems. And we saw Rudi's
95%. That's pretty impressive.
It really was impressive. And it wasn't that, like, you didn't put that much money into that sand lane, and they'll just keep using that.
The most expensive is where they let the solids go to the bottom, dig it out, and then spread them on the field, because that's economically not feasible. But you're also ruining the soil.
So there's so many other things to consider when we're talking about manure, because it's a system. It's part of a system. And and
then when you think about it, it's like, okay, the cost of handling the manure is part of the livestock system. Mm-hmm. How do we maximize those benefits so that we're minimizing the cost to the livestock?
So I was a bit surprised to see manurigation out of a pivot, because I've talked with some farmers that have tried it and have said that is a definite no, that manure just plugs those nozzles and it is a messy, messy cleanup job. So we're starting to see the 360 rain here in Ontario. Chris, do you have any thoughts? Because you've seen it in action.
I've seen it in action. It's pretty impressive. Benefit is you're putting down water and nutrients into the corn during the growing season when that corn needs it. It's nice that it can go at really low rates. and it can apply like 2,000 gallons at a time and several times through the season. So it has, those are real big benefits. It's robotic, so it's not really high horsepower, and it's not doing the compaction damage that you would get with tankers. So there's benefits that way. I think the biggest negative is you're limited on how many liquids you can cover. So it's not like if you've got 600 acres, you can do all 600 acres in 1 year. You're limited to those. And there's guys in the States that have 10 of these systems. And they're mixing water and liquidy manure. But the real value to me is you can separate the solids. You're left with water that's less than 1% solids, and where it's really hard to justify tankering that manure any kind of distance.
I love the word tankering.
Anyway, so that's a big cost. But if suddenly your water becomes a value added, then suddenly those costs change. And you're not worrying about phosphorus buildup to the same degree. You're getting a little bit of nitrogen. So there's a lot of benefits from that system. I think the pivot system, I saw some in the States. There's all kinds of different nozzles that you can get for it. So the trick there is going to be making sure that you've got a screen ahead of it so that you're not getting any solids to plug it up in the first place, so especially still.
Chris and I toured Walker Dairy this summer, and we couldn't not share. It's one of the largest, most innovative dairies we've seen. A lot of cows on sand bedding with a sand recovery lane, of a Planahan sand shaker, and then it's off to an anaerobic digester and then separating the digestate. But we talked with Ken Empey, who's running the solid manure side of the operation, and he's value adding by turning it into compost and selling it to farmers near and far for land application. Okay, so we are here at Walker Dairy right outside of Aylmer, and we've got Ken Empey here who manages a lot of the solid manure side, but there is a lot of manure on this farm. Can you talk just a little bit about how it's all managed and what types of manure are being managed and sold out of this dairy?
Sure. So first up, we spread at the big dairy where there's 1,700 cows milked. We spread all that manure, which is pretty much all liquid, except for where the special needs cows are. And it's pack manure, which is sawdust and straw together. And then we bring it here and we make compost, which is in the piles behind us. And we also have heifers here on packs. The spring and heifers, there's approximately 600 to 700, depending from time to time, that are on the packs. And again, that's chopped straw, sawdust, urine, and manure together. And then I bring it out and I'd like to run it through the spreader. When we bring it off the packs, I'd like to put it and then push it up into piles. And then I keep aerating and moving the piles. And there's this special thing with this. When you're making compost, you need the aeration, you need the oxygen, but you don't want it too wet, but you need you need some moisture also. And you need to keep it aerated. So that's an important part of trying to make it. And then you got to let it age. That's a process it does on it. So the solid.
What does it take usually?
It could take anywhere from, and again, that depends on the weather, and how much moisture you're getting. And the temperature, it can take anywhere from some in the very back here is a year old, and some here right behind us is 4 to 5 months old. And then we also sell solid manure. We take some of from the calf barn, the bedding from the calf barns, and we use it for the mix, and also across the yard from the stockyards. There's mix over there, and we bring it from the alleyways from these barns here. There's about 15 to 1,600 head here, and we mix it each day, and we sell that solid manure to ginseng farmers, to crop farmers, to vegetable farmers, tobacco farmers, all down through mostly in Norfolk County area. So
how far abouts would it go? How many kilometers?
It would go about, the farthest would be about 50 kilometers from the farm, the solid manure, and about the same with the compost also.
How much do you charge for it? People always want to know what's the value of manure post.
The people that we have a contract with, the people that haul all year round the solid manure, that's on dump trailers, and they get $22 a ton for it. This here is $20 a yard. The compost is $20 a yard delivered.
Wow. Yeah. And you never have problem getting rid of it, do you?
No.
It's in high demand.
There's never a problem getting rid of it at all.
So everyone's wondering how many tons would be in a yard for this density compost?
Approximately 1,000 pounds per yard. Again, that depends on the dryness or the wetness of it.
but usually on average, like on a 30-yard load, it usually runs around 16 ton.
And how many tons would you typically be applying per acre would be a good application rate?
On the compost, I go by the yards, so I would say 7 to 10 yards per acre to first go. Maybe the second year you don't need quite as much, 5 or 6. So.
Yeah, excellent. Well, it's a beautiful operation, and the compost looks great. Smells even better.
That give you a sense.
That was just me telling you what you've already heard at the beginning. Yeah, thanks. How did you guys feel? Was that as cringy for you as it was for me, seeing yourself in video? I'd never been so annoyed by the background music as I was this version.
Okay, yeah. So Ken and Rudi and Ryan, will pull you guys forward here with Mel. And actually, Mel, I was thinking the same thing. Wondering
About how cringy it was?
No.
Okay.
No, I was thinking about, this video was made over 2024, right? Leading up to a wrap up for 2025. So I'm just curious from each of the farmers, maybe starting with you, Ken, is your feelings of watching what you said then, and has anything changed from then until now, or anything you want to add, or just general comments? Ken,
Well,
starting with you.
okay, thank you very much. Well, yes, we, of course, over a year ago, we stopped using, more than a year and a half ago, we stopped using beef cross. So we've gone all to sex semen. So as a result, we're adding anywhere between 100 and 125 extra head a month. So since that video, we're probably 1,000 head more of cattle that we have around than when we did that video. So right now we're probably in that 7,000 to 8,000 head total. The other thing is, with the uncertainty of fertilizer right now, my solid manure is in demand more than it's ever been. We've got people calling the broker that hauls the manure. They're calling that they've never put manure on before, solid manure, because they're scared they're not going to be able to get enough commercial fertilizer. So I've been able to, like in the month of January, as tough a month as it was, we were able to get 51 dump trailer loads, and on each trailer there's 35 to 40 ton. That was in the month of January. In the month of February, we were able to get between compost and solid manure. We got 41 dump trailer loads of solid manure and 16 triaxle loads of compost out. So the demand is strong. At the same time, at the digester, we're getting more because it's really running at full capacity now because we are using more. We just started putting electricity out into the grid. So we're using more, we're needing more natural gas. So we're running them at full capacity. But as a result, in the lagoon, we're getting more affluent, more liquid, we're getting a little bit more solid, even though we're trying to separate it out. So yeah, I would say that we're under pressure a little bit more than we've ever been. But at this moment, we're able to get it marketed.
Ryan, I'll throw it to you. Yeah, just your impressions watching yourself on video in your Hollywood debut. Anything that
Oh, no,
comes to
he's a
mind?
veteran, actually.
We
Yes.
haven't really changed much at all. We're still doing the same thing. Excuse me. The Rain 360 definitely is something that is on my shopping list. Unfortunately, only milking 60, 65 cows. That shopping list is maybe a little too far out for me at the present moment. But yeah, it's kind of, I got to take stuff one step at a time, and it might be 5 or 6 years before the next step. But the separation's been working real well. The green bedding's been working real well. We're year and a half on it here now, and I'm not looking to shy away from it at all. That's for sure.
Awesome. And Rudi.
Yeah, man. We had the one season on when we did that video, and we saw some great yield boosts. And last year we had a great growing season, but we still saw some awesome yield boosts. Like the alpha yield boost has been really surprising to me. Like it's well over two times. It's 2.5 probably, and then even the corn yield, they get some great yields, and we were still seeing 40% yield bump on our irrigated versus non-irrigated. So, we just have one pivot right now. The second one is coming, just not sure when, and the next year, or year after. But there's more coming. It's just it's been really good for us and our soils to help us boost yields. And yeah, obviously it's been really nice not having to pay that contracting bill anymore. So
Yeah,
Hey,
and Mel,
he just knows how to get me, just like little stabs. There's some great questions in the chat.
yeah,
Not
go
sure
for it.
when should we even start with? Well, I'll start at the bottom actually and work my way up. Lauren Ray had surprised that the demand is strong for composted manure, I'm assuming, and you need to understand where Ken is living. And maybe you can give a bit more context of why the demand is so strong in your area when there's not that much dairy farms. Who's buying your manure? Your composted manure, Ken?
Well, the composted manure is going to some farmers. We got a winery that's taking some. We've got strawberry farmers that are taking some, but we also got a lot of landscapers that are mixing it in and making it into a three-way mix in their three-way mix. Also, they're finding that it's working good in ladies' flower beds and around trees and shrubs. And
Men grow flowers too,
and they like it because there's no smell to it, but they notice a big difference in their flowers and in the trees and the shrubs.
but it's not like you're marketing them in bags, or are they still buying
No,
them? No,
it's
so you're
all we handle everything in bulk. And like I
interesting.
said on the solid manure, because we're in that, we're close to the sand ground, but it's not just the sand ground people. Like we had people this fall that one farmer, he's never put manure on before, and it was on heavy clay ground. It was just between us and London at Belmont, just north of Belmont, and they put 3,000 ton on and spread it yet before the snow flew or before it froze up. So we got lots of crop farmers that are growing just soybeans and corn and wheat that are
Uh-huh.
now putting more and more solid manure on. So
Yeah.
we if we had twice as much solid manure, we could sell it all.
No, it's interesting. Yeah. And Lauren is just from New York. And even like on your intro, you had Plowman's Choice, which is another there near me where there's tons of manure. There's so much manure in my area. And so they did it as a value added. They are bagging it and they are sending it far, far away. So they've got a great market for that too. Interesting. There was some great stories about unplugging nozzles while the pivot is still running. Rudy, have you had there was some good discussion of because you've separated and you have several settling ponds. Do you have issues with the pivot plugging?
yeah, so the way our system works, we have the sand lane goes with pit one. Then we have our separator, our slope screen goes with pit two, and that's what we're using to flush the barns with. And then that flows over the top, flows over pit three, and then we pump the top of that to our long-term storage pit four. So there's several settling ponds, and then from there it pumps in directly to our pivot. And there's a screen at the bottom of the pivot, and then obviously the nozzles. Um, Usually in the beginning of the season, the first 2 or 3 passes, you don't have any problems with plugging. As you get further into the season, your third, so fourth, fifth pass, usually before you start, you watch the screen at the bottom, and then you just kind of watch the nozzles. If you see one plug up, before you turn it on the next time, I'll come and clean those out because otherwise, yeah, you do get kind of wet with some not nice stuff. If you're doing it while you're trying to do it then, and then by the last pass, then you might have to clean that screen halfway, and you just have to accept that that's part of it. But it's still a lot easier than running into a tractor and running for 20 hours straight hauling manure. So that's kind of what I'm comparing it to. Like, yeah, there's some pain points with this, but it's still a lot easier than the other option for us.
Yeah. And the stories I had heard, they had not done that much treatment to manure, just like mixing it with some water and hoping for the best, running through a pivot. That is a recipe for disaster. And yes, you will be stinky for days. Here's a question for Ryan, I imagine. We're looking at is there research done? Probably you don't have to ask about your research, but your experience putting calcium carbonate in dairy bedding. But you put lime on, or like how do you help with that with the bedding?
When we were on the sawdust, we were liming our stalls morning and night. We had some mastitis issues when we were on the sawdust. When we first switched to the green fiber, well, sure enough, we still had some bags of lime there. So my father was like, well, we may as well use it up. So we were using it. And when the skid ran empty, I said he's not allowed buying another one. So we haven't used lime in probably 6 weeks since the press went in, which the press went in August of 2024. So since say September or October of 2024, we haven't been adding anything to the fiber. It's I try to start the press around 7 o'clock at night, right when hydro gets cheap, and by 7 o'clock the next morning we're bedding it.
Mm-hmm. Is there anyone else that wants to chime in there? Have they seen any other sort of compounds used on bedding for hygiene. Rudy, you've got sand, so worried
No
about
doubt.
anything is what I'm hearing.
While you're
I
looking there, Mel, I'm gonna put in a shameless plug because
Please
somebody
do.
was talking about pipelines
Yeah.
and moving the long distance. Just reminder that the first session we did this year was moving manure further. That's a good one to circle back to. We did have some of the conversation about that as well.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. And Jack, why are we not friends yet? Like, let's make this happen. What was my rule of thumb that I got from Nick from Husky was like, if it's under 2 kilometers or 1.5 kilometers, you should be drag lining it. Hi, Jack. And if it's up to 5 kilometers, do a tankering, as it were. Then after 5 to 10, look at frac tank, like trucking it. And then this was maybe for dairy manure, but if beyond 10, then start looking at value adding somehow to it. So yeah, oh, thanks for popping that in the chat though. But yeah, no, manure is it's very expensive once you have to put wheels under it. And so the question came in like, why are we not talking about anaerobic digesters? And yes, for the purpose of this project, we're not looking at them because I think there's been enough research done on their economic feasibility. We have more than enough that are coming online here in Ontario, and my understanding is they have their own fair share of problems. But two Dutch people, Jack, start chatting. So the idea of making them co-ops, like having a centralized facility. And we even kind of started doing that in this project, looking at, well, what about an acidifier? What if we had acidification as a centralized facility? It really only makes sense if you're piping that manure there, because once you have to load it in a truck, dump it off, and then if there's digestate that you've got to bring back, like it makes sense in very specific situations, perhaps. But yeah, we still have 7 minutes left. What do you guys want to talk about?
So I just want to read, Ryan did answer the one question already
Yeah.
in the chat, asking about how often he beds. He says every Thursday morning when on sawdust and now on fiber once a week. So thank you for answering that, Ryan.
Mel,
Um,
email. Okay.
I also want to mention too, Mel, you mentioned in the video about AgriSuite. Do you want to
Yeah.
say anything about, can you give, so I don't have to give a shameless plug about
Oh,
AgriSuite?
well, okay, to be honest, it was a bit hard to understand, I'm not gonna lie. But once you go in there, my concern was that someone was watching, like me putting in my numbers, but that is not happening. Like, it is just a tool that anyone can just dump their numbers in, and it gives a sense of how big your manure storage should be, all that kind of stuff. Like, it's super helpful. And then it was like, estimate what your greenhouse gas emissions are based on what's your bedding, it's all of this science that all of you guys have been doing at the Ministry of Agriculture, and I imagine some from the feds as well, is going into a tool that farmers can use. And I hope they're not keeping track. They're not keeping track, are they, Andrew? Because
Oh, Big Brother
I
is
put
not
a lot of
watching.
asking for a friend scenarios in EggerSuite, but no, it spits out numbers, and I mean, it's based on the best science. It's better than pulling out numbers from you know where.
Yeah. So, Chris Brown, maybe you could post a link to it in the chat,
Yes,
or you can just Google AgriSuite. But basically, it's an Ontario software program we developed that, as Mel said, sizing and manure storage, doing fertility planning for
yeah.
crop nutrient plans, organic amendments, all kinds of things. It's free. It's got some great tools. I would encourage you to check that out, AgriSuite. Yeah, Mel, do you have other questions in the last few minutes here? Because I do want to hear what the
Oh,
guys are thinking for the future.
yes, that's
Um,
my last question too.
okay. All right.
Guys, have at her. Rudy, what's next for you?
Yeah, I guess only I would like to say else is like that Rain 360. Like we're seeing more and more of those in Ontario. I think there's real options and opportunities. Like when we were looking at our pivot system, they were not available yet in Ontario, and I looked real hard at it, and I thought that was maybe the direction we go. But for our land base, the fact that we have larger acreages around the farm, a pivot is cheaper as long as you can get over 100 acres in a circle. Then a pivot definitely is cheaper than any the Rain 360. But if you don't have that, if you have power lines up for that, I think the Rain 360 is a real good option. But
And
for us for the future, I mean,
oh, go ahead.
for us for the future, like we're looking at more pivots. We have the sand lane. We want to create more concrete storage to dry and start reusing more of that sand. Right now, the heifers get all reused sand, and the milk cows get fresh sand. And I like that to be Everyone gets reused sand. So more storage, and other than that, the system's working really good. Just trying to get more acres underwater. Because if I can get 40% or so of my feed needs underwater, and guarantee that every year, I mean that's going to be for us a big win, and making sure we always have good feed and lots of feed for the cows and keeping our costs low.
No, it's such an important point. Like, you don't need to buy a new farm if you can double your yields on what you have. Yeah. And I should have mentioned that we met Ryan, Ken, and Rudi from doing this project because they were some of the gracious farmers that chatted with us. One of the interesting things I want to think about for the future is how do we get dry culverts under roads, because that 360, you're kind of within your own little. If you can't go under a road, uh, then you might not be able to access that land. Let's hear from Ryan for the future, and then Ken will end us off.
For me, on the manure separation, we're kind of at our maximum there. Like we already are separating 100% of that new build. For me, I'm probably more so going at solar panels next, just because they're more in my budget than the 360 currently.
They're not cheap, but they are dedicated.
Yeah, the payback's 8 years, so that's not too bad.
Did you say 80 years?
8.
Oh, 8. Okay, that's better than a sand lane.
I don't have sands. I don't got
I
room.
know. We've got a question for Mark, but let's let Ken answer for the future.
Well, for the future, yeah, the cost of trucking the which we do mostly truck the manure. We do drag hose some right around the lagoons, but we're farming right at 5,000 acres. So we have 5 big tankers, and those tankers they're running $185 an hour, and they're running 12 to 13 hours a day. So we're right close to under $1 million a year that we're spending in spreading the liquid manure. So we want to try and watch that cost all we can. Plus, we want to reuse the sand as much as we can. Now, we are fortunate; we do have our own sand pits, and we're licensed to take the sand out. But eventually, that will run out, and we also want to be able to reuse it. So at this moment, we're not reusing the sand as good as we should. So there's two things we want to watch: is the cost of that hauling that liquid, because that it is getting to be it is getting up there, but I mean, it does really help the land, but the cost it's almost getting to be prohibitive in some cases. So that and the sand, we're really watching the ways to be able to reuse the sand.
Interesting. Why do we have questions coming in at the 11th hour, people? If we could, well, we do have a hard stop, I guess, but
Oh,
Mark,
we're good.
are we? Okay, well,
Yep.
Mark had mentioned a hog manure. And for our project, we did look at hog manure, but there is not a lot of treatment that you can do on hog manure. Aeration is basically it, and for underbarn storages in particular. Jeff, does this exist? Rudi, have you ever seen like the sort of the drop hoses on a 360 rain, but then install on a center pivot?
I have not. I imagine you could try something like that, but I think you're gonna struggle more or less with trying to keep the pressures high enough across the whole pivot. Like at some point, you have to restrict it to get the pressures to the end. Otherwise, it'll just drop out too soon. Like you got a 1,200-foot pivot, it takes you need, and if you have nozzles over so many feet, you need to keep the pressures up somehow. So you have to restrict it somehow. But I'm sure you could just put splash plates in the bottom instead of nozzles as well. But like I said, for us, it hasn't really been a problem.
To
If
oh,
Jack isn't correct.
we have some drama in the chat. Mark, how does it work for you said you've got those drops on your pivots for liquid hog manure. Can you pop in the chat how you equalize the pressure?
Or Mark, if you want to unmute, go ahead. You
Yeah.
can do that and just make a comment on that. Mark's a regular here on Manure Mondays. If you're able to unmute Mark, go for it. Otherwise, comment in the chat is fine as well.
There
Okay,
he
so we got well, it doesn't matter what kind of pivot. We have Lindsay pivots. We've been doing it for about 20, built them in 97, 29 years. So basically it was set up through Lindsay Engineering, and our pivot, so out of the top of our pivot pipe, there's a gooseneck that comes out, and the closer you are to the pivot center, the farther they are apart, and they're spaced accordingly. And yeah, you need a good pump and keep your pressure up. And we run our pivots around, one's around 55, and I think the other one's around 70. All depends on elevation climb. And no, it works quite well. They're not 100% exactly the same, but they're probably within 15% the application, something like that.
Interesting. Any thoughts on that, Rudy?
I just want to say we do acknowledge that we're at our 3 o'clock here. So folks that need to leave, go ahead. Next week, we're going to be back on manure safety. And this is a good time of year to start thinking about that, knowing what's coming. So talking about gas is talking about disease is actually all aspects of it. We've got the veterinarian, we've got a really good team. So look forward to having you back next week. But we'll let the questions continue here until they're done. So Rudy, I'll turn it back to you to go ahead and answer that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know much more beyond what we installed here. I mean, I worked with Cadman, who has a Renke pivot, and they have these special nozzles, which is like they call them track busters, and they're designed to do manure, from what I understood. So instead of an orifice with a hole in it, the restrictor kind of gets flat to try and help push those fibers through the restrictors and to try and even out the application. But we can run our pivot around 35, 40 psi. It's 1,220 feet long. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what other options out there because what I'm doing is working, so I don't really look beyond what we're doing. But I'm sure there's lots of ways to do it. I'm not saying that nothing can be done. It's just the way we're doing it's working as well. So
Also, a plug from Carl in the chat here about the manure management software available in the US. And like, is NMan available in AgriSuite too, Andrew? Or is that
Yeah,
for
yes, it's built into it.
It's built into it. So in essence, farmers could be making their own cropping for manure cropping plans within
Absolutely.
AgriSuite as well. Although you
Absolutely.
can also work with an agronomist that could also be using that software. Yeah. I'm curious, do you guys this is not a safe place. How's your guys' nutrient management plans? No, I'm not sure. I'm curious if there's any tools that you guys are using for your cropping decisions or if you're working with agronomists.
yeah, like we work with an agronomist to put stuff together. Deb Campbell, she kind of looks at that for us. So we're just a lot of our decisions are based off soil sampling, just seeing how the soil changes and then make adjustments based on that.
Yeah.
I'm the same as Rudy. We work with Jonathan Zettler.
Ken,
No,
you
well,
guys probably
hey,
have your own in-team agronomist.
well, yeah, we do, but we also work with Sylvite very
Yeah.
closely, our fertilizer supplier. So,
Awesome.
and we've actually Christine has been at the farm a couple times, given it helping us with we've been able to cut back on commercial fertilizer because we realized we were putting too much commercial fertilizer on, where we were putting so much. Um, After each cutting of hay, we're putting the liquid manure on. So we were able to save. I think this year we're going to be able to save right at 300,000 in fertilizer costs because we don't need that extra fertilizer.
Uh-huh.
Standing. All right. Mel, any final comments?
Well, yeah, I'm kind of scrolling back. Is there someone that we totally missed in the chat? Was lively in the chat here. I think we got everything. Yeah. Well, yeah, no, how about we let everybody get to the rest of their day then?
So let me just say thank you. Thank you, Mel, for joining us again and bringing your team. So Ryan, Ken, Rudy, appreciate what you did. It's springtime shortly here, so all the best in spring and appreciate your time. Thanks everybody for joining us, and we'll see you next week. Same time, same place. Cheers.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.